Well, welcome everyone. This is so exciting. I'm not sure why Alex is in the middle there. Welcome everyone. This is very exciting. I'd like you to welcome Elisabeth Sabaditsch-Wolff. She's been a great friend to me, to the American Freedom Alliance, to freedom generally. She was convicted of inciting hate and hate speech and does not have the defense of the Constitution in Austria as we do here. Her conviction was upheld in the European Court of Human Rights. So a freedom fighter who has paid a terrible price. She wrote a book about it, Truth is No Defense. We hosted her. She's spoken at a number of AFA events. And she and I have been speaking during this whole COVID time, her in Austria, me here. They shut down before we did, and we've sort of been following along with what they've been doing and comparing, she and I, and thought we really should share these conversations with everybody. So I'd like to welcome Elisabeth, who is joining us from her mountain home in Austria, normally living in Vienna, but has been doing quarantining up in the Alps. So please join me in welcoming Elisabeth.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Karen, for hosting me and having me today.
Thank you for joining us. So you and I have been comparing as we go along what's been going on in Austria and what's been going on here. And when Austria shut down, it was well before us, and it was just such a shocking thing for a country to shut down. So can you tell us what that was like, just really quickly, and then we'll move on to what's been going on now?
Well, I do have to back up a little bit because I was in the US for CPAC in late February and flew back to Austria on March 1st, arriving in Vienna on March 2nd. And the night before my departure, my husband, who is a doctor in the Austrian army, told me, stock up on Advil, try to take some Advil on the plane before you disembark. You don't want to have a temperature even near, 37 degrees. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, because they won't let you back into the country. And I was kind of surprised because when I traveled to the US in mid-February, I had been asked, I counted about 5 or 6 times, have you been to China in the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks? But there was nothing of the sort when I got on the plane in Washington, D.C., or when I got off the plane in Vienna. So that was March 2nd. We had already had our first 2 or 3 COVID cases in Austria. And of course, nobody really knew what was going on behind the scenes, but apparently the Austrian government was already preparing the shutdown. The second week of March, there was already talk of shutting down, a complete shutdown, and the media told us, no, that's just fake news. It's a conspiracy theory. There won't be a complete shutdown. People were starting to get nervous. And then, what was it, Wednesday, must have been March 10th, we were informed that schools would be closed as of Friday afternoon. So Friday would be the last day of school. And 2 things happened. The first thing was my husband called me on the phone. He was already tied up at the army hospital. He called me on the phone and said, I want you and our daughter to pack up. I want you out of Vienna as soon as schools are closed. That was the first thing. And the second thing that happened was on Friday, my daughter called me early in the morning. She was basically on her way into entering the school. She was just outside the school, and she called me and said, oh, Mom, everybody is panicking. All the students are running away. there's rumors of some student's dad who tested positive for corona. And I told her, you stay calm, do not leave the school, go into the classroom and stay there. There's absolutely no need to panic. You're not gonna get corona, you're not gonna die from it. Just stay calm, stay in school, pack your stuff, come back home, and then we'll pack up and leave to go to our little house in the Alps. I remember also very distinctly on that Friday that I was reliving some post-traumatic stress disorder that I suffer from now and then because of 1990, what happened exactly 30 years ago in August of 1990 when I was stuck in Kuwait when the invasion happened. If you're interested in reading up on that, you need to get my book, because that's where I describe in great detail what happened to me in Kuwait. So I did suffer from some post-traumatic stress disorder. I was nervous. I had stomach cramps. I had to run to the bathroom all the time. So I was nervous, even though I knew that there was no danger. I mean, come on, if you've been in a few wars like I have, corona is certainly not going to frighten me or anyone in my family. So my daughter and I packed up on that Friday, and we were ready to go early Saturday morning and my husband was supposed to travel with us because we did have a lot of, we were actually moving house. I knew I wasn't going to be back anytime soon. And then in the morning, he woke up, held his phone in his phone in his hand and said, "Honey, I'm sorry I can't come with you. I have to pack up and leave right away. I have been recalled to barracks immediately." And in 20 years of our marriage, and he's been with the Army, with the Army Medical Corps for 20 years too, this has never, ever happened. So I was getting kind of nervous, I have to be very honest, because this is a new situation. This was a new situation, and it makes you wonder what was really going on, because we didn't have all the information, neither did my husband. So I quickly did some shopping before we left Vienna. I actually saw people stocking up on the famous toilet paper and all the other goods. I was never nervous. I never stocked up on any toilet paper or anything else. I always knew that we would never have a problem with getting our basic necessities. Again, what helped me was 30 years ago when I woke up August 2nd, and I saw the helicopters above Kuwait, and I knew that there had been a full-blown military invasion. I mean, come on, seriously, that's a totally different situation. You can't compare that to a virus that even back in March was known not to kill people, in the streets, okay? But nevertheless, there was an eerie feeling when you went to the different grocery stores and everybody was panicking, and there was already talk of a complete shutdown, even though the politicians still said it wasn't going to happen. So anyway, we packed up, my daughter and I. We grabbed the cats. We got some cat food just in case. That was the only thing I was worried about, that we wouldn't have enough cat food. And as a matter of fact, at some point during the lockdown, there was a shortage of a specific cat food, but that's the only shortage I ever experienced. And it was really interesting when we drove to the Alps. I won't tell you exactly where I am because it won't really make a difference. But where I'm located is in the southwest of Austria. I would say a couple of alpine passes away from the Italian border. So it's not really far, but then again, pretty far, because you have to cross a few alpine passes. Now, let me read to you what I wrote, how our drive through a completely shut down Austria already, that was Saturday, felt.
Hold on one second. So this was Saturday. So we hadn't locked down yet.
No, no, no.
So Elizabeth, I just want to, Elizabeth and I were talking. Austria was shutting down. There was a run on toilet paper, no pun intended, and and she's telling me this, and nothing had happened in the U.S. yet, and it was such a horrifying thing that Austria, my Austria, right? I mean, I have deep connections to Austria, is shut down. A country is shut down. Now we look back and we say, oh yeah, we've all been shut down. But another reason I wanted Elisabeth to come on is just to remind us of words that we use, we just toss them around now, but remember back to March, this was an inconceivable thing to have happen. Worry about supply chains, worry about getting out of the city, worry about, already there was this bifurcation of people like Elisabeth, like you, knowing that the fear of the virus wasn't the thing. It was the terror that they were instilling in your daughter, and then this military footing that your husband was now being put on was, you know, I'm sitting here in Southern California, everything is fine, and you're being locked down and making a run for the hills. So we hadn't gone through this yet. And you're okay, so go ahead and tell us this.
So anyway, this is just a short, because I really want to read it, because this is what I wrote at the time. In normal times, the main highway to the south is commonly used by cars and countless heavy laden trucks likely heading to Austria's neighbors, Italy or Slovenia. Not on this Saturday. Not only was the highway empty, but so were the winding roads through the mountainous areas. There were no tractors or other farm equipment slowing us down. No one on a sightseeing tour, just a mother, her daughter, and their cats, fleeing the city for safety in the countryside while listening to hourly breaking news on the radio. After all, the mayor of Vienna had recently announced that he and his experts expected hundreds or thousands of COVID-19 infected people in Vienna, and had therefore started erecting a makeshift hospital in a large exhibition hall to assist the hospitals. And just imagine, you know, this was, I know this, it feels like it was just yesterday, what I was just reading to you. These are really hourly breaking news with updates on what was actually shutting down and how people were panicking. And even though in my heart of hearts, I knew there was absolutely nothing to panic about, you know, the human psyche, it is a wondrous thing, but it is also something that can destroy you, because that fear, it's the fear that destroys you. It's not the coronavirus that will kill you. It's the fear. And that was already being instilled as we were actually racing to the mountains to escape the city. And that was actually a smart thing to do. On Sunday, I think we were speaking on Monday morning, my time, so Sunday night, your time. And my daughter and I had taken the opportunity to go skiing for the last time this season. That was March 14th, if I remember correctly, Sunday, March 14th. A glorious day. I mean, I was literally in tears when I took off my skis for the last time, because I knew all ski areas were closed as of that Sunday afternoon, and it was going to be the last day. And this is actually my time. This is my time to go skiing. You know, skiing for me starts in March and April, goes into May, and I have to stop skiing on March 14th, all because of something that I knew wasn't going to kill me. I knew that. So the lockdown started in earnest on Monday. No schools, no shops, no stores, everything quiet. Even where I was, where it was usually quiet anyway, but it was even quieter than it usually was. And I saw on television reports from Vienna all throughout that week, and we were bombarded with news reports and news conferences by the government. I would say there were about 4 or 5 news conferences on every single day, telling us You need to stay home. There's a law. You can only go out if you do 1, 2, 3, or 4. If you're caught outside, the police will, they won't arrest you, but they will fine you. There was footage on Austrian television where you actually see people, because the weather was so glorious already, so spring-like, people were sitting in the big parks in Vienna trying to catch some air. And, you know, you would see police officers, which is usually unheard of in Vienna. We're not a police state. Austria is not a police state. But police had nothing better to do than to approach these people who were sitting peacefully in a park and tell them to get up and disperse. And lots of people were actually fined, which is important when we'll get back to those fines later on. They were ticketed and fined. And there was just a basic fear also when, again, in my report that I sort of like a diary entry. Every day, every night at 8 p.m. after the evening news, the anchor would actually tell us, together we will manage this. Every night. Then every morning, the morning news, welcome to week 6 of the Corona crisis. Then another televised reprimand, countless times every single day, a TV spot teaching us how to interact, or basically not interact, with the slogan, take care of me, take care of you, together we'll get through this. Everywhere, billboards, we're in this together. Well, what is this? Nobody explained what this is. And, you know, this is really something that the propaganda was for me, unbearable. I knew right away that something was happening and I couldn't explain it. I can deal with, like I said, you know, 30 years ago, I was sitting in Kuwait in the middle of a war and Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait. I knew what was happening. There was a war going on. I needed to get out, but I was stuck in Kuwait. I was a hostage. But this was a clear situation in a sense that I could deal with it. Mm-hmm. The situation now is not something that we can deal with because we don't know who all the players are. And we know, even though we don't have all the red threads and the proof, but we know that we're being had. We know we're being played. But in Europe, we're being shut down. We can't talk about how we're being played. So I'm getting ahead of myself. But I also want to tell you, I think I told you that too. There was one night, I think it was in early April, that I woke up and I had something similar to a panic attack. I would say it was an anxiety attack. It wasn't a panic attack, it was anxiety. I felt like a cat was sitting on my chest. Which it obviously wasn't, but I had to get up, I had to do some breathing, and this is not something that I'm really, I don't get panic attacks. I'm not an anxious person. I've seen it all, I've been there, done that, I know it. But I just want to explain what this does to your psyche. And also, my daughter and I did not see my husband and my daughter's dad until he was able to get away for Easter. So that was, I would say, 6 weeks. Right. 7. So that was tough too.
So it's an out of control situation that they, whoever they is, the same they as we have here, use to impose measures that don't particularly make sense, right? All of this is, we've seen exactly the same thing. What we didn't see though, even in New York, even in urban centers, is until recently that we tossed around the word lockdown, but we were never really under a lockdown. We were told to stay home, stay safe by states, certainly more in California. And first in California, we were the first state to lock down. but we really weren't hassled on the street. So when you were telling me, you know, they would stop people, they would find people, your husband was stopped, asked where he was
Yes,
going.
exactly.
And this is really, we never saw this level of civic harassment. Don't even know if that's the civic, yeah, civic harassment.
I guess that's
Just
what
for
it is.
being on the street.
Yes, correct. So let me just
Your
quickly
laws were,
tell our viewers what happened to my husband was very early on. It must have been the first week of lockdown. His car, it has out of state license plates. So he doesn't have Viennese license plates, but he works in Vienna. So he was actually stopped at a traffic light by a police officer who asked him, "Where are you going? And what are your plans? Why are you not in your own, I would say, state, in your own, you know, whatever your license plate says?" So my husband said, "Look, I'm a doctor. I work at, I'm in charge of the Army Hospital. I'm the commanding officer at the Army Hospital here in Vienna." And he took out his wallet. It just shows how ridiculous the whole situation was. Took out his wallet for his ID, his Army ID. So the police officer looks at the Army ID and says, "Well, this expired on March 1st. And my husband said, "Excuse me, did you just hear what I said? I'm the commanding officer of the largest army hospital in Austria. Are you now going to discuss with me whether or not my ID is still valid or not? I should be on my way to take care of patients.
right.
Do you want to call the Minister of Defense to verify who I am, or are we going to just let it be and let me just drive to the hospital?" So the police officer then backed off. And what my husband did next was, when he arrived at the hospital, he immediately had papers, like sort of ID papers, drawn up for all the doctors and all the nurses in the hospital, proving as proof that these are essential personnel and they have a right to be in the streets.
So with chilling words, right? Your papers, please. This is, we haven't gotten there, but you were, and I believe in Michigan, their governor had imposed these kinds of things. You weren't allowed to be beyond a certain radius of your home. You couldn't go to your second home. That was the only state I heard of that was as restrictive on individuals as what you were seeing. Then there were laws that were passed, right? We have regulations, we have guidelines, but the laws that were passed in Austria were really, you call them COVID laws. They were built. Tell us about the laws, and are there ways around them, and not around them, but what, to what extent are they constitutional?
Of laws. Well, at the end of March, the government introduced laws that needed to be passed by Parliament. So Parliament was actually called. You know, the government can't rule by decree, like you know, there's no executive order like in the US. So the government had to have Parliament rule on or decide on these laws. Now, those laws were in many ways problematic. First of all, many of those individual laws were lumped together, and they were voted on as a lump, which is already not good, problematic. Second of all, the content of the laws, when they were introduced, usually you have a long period of time where laws are basically, quote unquote, sifted through by experts. Of course, now there was no time to actually look at the laws and analyze them. They were simply provided to the lawmakers and the members of parliament, and they were basically told to vote on it, on those lumps of laws called COVID laws. Problematic was we do have a very good law on epidemiological law. So what happens during a pandemic, what happens during a crisis situation, a public health crisis. This law, which it's already a very old law. I think it was a law from the 50s in the last century. And the government proposed a completely new law, which again is called the COVID law. And this had its advantages and the disadvantages. The disadvantages were mostly for the businesses because they weren't provided any sort of compensation, automatic compensation. So not good at all. The discussion was, whether you can leave the house, what are the reasons you can leave the house for, the furloughing, the shutdown of businesses. At first it was no need to wear a mask, then came the masks. Why did we not have the masks? Because there weren't enough masks around. So at first they told us, oh, masks are not going to make a difference. All of a sudden there were enough masks, and of course they make all the difference. And then came, March 30th, the COVID law amendment that everybody has to wear a mask in stores and public transportation. Now, the masks, we can talk about that separately, but the masks, for me personally, are a huge problem because, as a lot of people who are watching us today know, I'm an activist against any kind of face covering. I think there's nothing more demeaning than a person who is masked, especially women. And it makes me sick to my stomach, literally makes me sick to my stomach, it gives me the creeps, it gives me panic attacks. Just the thought of covering my face with anything, whether it is a mask, even when I'm skiing and it's cold and it's really, really, the icicles, they're stuck to your skin. Even then, I really don't like to cover my face. So I really do have a personal problem with covering myself. Now, there's only one photo of me on the very first day I went out after the masks were enacted, the mask law was enacted, of me with a scarf covering my face. I have not worn a mask or a scarf ever since. I do not cover. The way I deal with it right now is I just walk into the store and I don't wear it. Nobody says a word to me. And secondly, it's very interesting. I'm going to show you the actual law. I know you can't read it, but I know Karen's the only one who can read it. But this is what the law looks like in Austria. Okay, just so you know what the law looks like. And I've highlighted one sentence. So when in, mid-June, masks were no longer required, everybody went, and said, no more masks, excellent, excellent. So numbers rose again. And in mid-July, this new amendment to the law came. It was actually July 22nd. Feels like ages. And the law was amended to say, you are supposed to wear a mask, you must wear a mask upon entering a store. It's very important, the words entering, not dwelling in a store, not shopping in a store, upon entering. And now comes the really, really mean part. The Chancellor of Austria, the 32-year-old, I know everything better than everybody else, and everybody will know, and I'm quoting him, there will come a time where everyone in Austria will know someone who died of COVID. That's how he scared us. He said, I really don't care what the law says, whether it's a good law or a bad law, whether it's constitutional or unconstitutional, it doesn't really matter. Because by the time the Constitutional Court rules on the law will no longer be in effect. So you have a chancellor who has no regard for the rule of law. And so it is with this law. He's not going to change this law because he's counting on scared, frightened Austrians to comply anyway. Because either the Austrians don't know what the law says, or even if they did know what the law said, it doesn't really matter because they're going to wear the muzzle anyhow.
Muzzle.
They're going to wear it because they're so scared that all of a sudden there's a virus flying around and it's going to kill us, that they're going to wear it anyway. So this is the state of the rule of law. Mind you, Karen, many of those COVID laws have since been actually ruled unconstitutional, completely unconstitutional. They knew that, the government knew that, they didn't care, because the desired effect was, let's scare people into submission, and it worked. A-okay. It's just baffling.
Wasn't there also, as far as the masks, he said he didn't care about the efficacy or not, it was to remind people?
Yes.
It was less about it being effective and more of it being a constant reminder of the threat. And so
yes, that's exactly what he said. And that's what frightens me. I mean, you see this in the US as well, and you see this around the world. I mean, look at Boris Johnson all of a sudden, what he's doing in the United Kingdom. It's no longer science-based.
Right.
The chancellor knows exactly that masks don't work. There is plenty, I mean, as always in science, science is never settled, as you know better than I do. Science is never settled, otherwise it's probably not science, right? So there are arguments for the masks, and there's lots of arguments against the mask. I asked my husband, what do you think? I mean, he's a surgeon. I'm used to seeing my husband in a mask. That doesn't bother me, because I know he wears it because he's in an operating room and he needs to wear a mask. That's just safety protocol. And I asked him, and he said, no, there's absolutely no point in wearing these masks. And, let me return to, we're being had. You and I and everybody else who does due diligence, who does all of us, we read, we do research, and I'm trying to find a sort of an understandable explanation of what's going on. I do have my ideas, of course, but as a sane mind I'm not a sheep, as everybody knows who's with us today.
No sheep here. There's no
I'm everything but a sheep.
Free zone right here. Yeah.
And it just doesn't make sense.
So before we get to your ideas, how is this being welcomed or not in Austria? We have very active social media and alternative media here that I don't think you particularly have, although it seems to be growing. And the role of China, does this come up? We're seeing it less and less, actually, in the beginning. So what is the narrative of all of this?
There is no China narrative at all. I mean, we do know that the European Union is very pro-China, and there's absolutely no criticism of China at all. That is also something that baffled me. Where is all the anger directed at China? I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, everybody knows the virus came from China. How it came from China, we can debate that, okay? There's all sorts of theories on how the virus made its way out of China, but we all agree it came from China. Now, why is there actually no anger? But even in the US, there's no real discussion, no real anger directed at the Chinese leadership, the Communist Party. That's what I'm missing. I'm actually waiting. I mean, where is China taking responsibility for so many, I'm not going to say for so many deaths, but so much pain and so much suffering? Well, if not, they want exactly the same, or maybe our governments, our powers that be, want the same kind of lockdown or human, experiment. Isn't it a great experiment on how to control people? Do our powers that be want to be able to control our population, even though we are supposedly a liberal democratic society, how are these powers going to impose a totalitarian order like in China,
Right.
wittingly or unwittingly, on people who actually believe in freedom? I mean, look at the US. I mean, look what happened in 4 months. You've become like Europeans, despite the Constitution.
Despite the Constitution. And here, you know, if we consider an experiment, it's even a more interesting experiment with federalism, right? Different
Yeah.
states, it's easy to look at which states are doing what. If it is an experiment, if that is the purpose, it does seem that it's failing in a lot of ways, because red states with less control seem to be faring less imposed regulations are faring far better economically, health-wise, than the deep blue states. So a lot is being revealed about what works and what doesn't. It's also terrifying what just happened in Australia with them literally arresting people, literally this morning, for speaking out. Just a handful they were expecting big crowds, only got a handful of people, and literally arresting them for speaking out. You've had arrests in Austria, people breaking quarantine?
Yes, so far we've had 2 court cases of people who broke quarantine. Now, it's not that I disagree with, you know, people who are by law quarantined really shouldn't leave the house, but they also shouldn't be in front of a judge.
Well, quarantine for what reason?
Well,
Quarantined, which is
suspected COVID. You know, I think that one woman had a positive test and was told to quarantine by law. And yes, the woman definitely made a mistake, but the judge fined her 1,200 euros, which is what, about 1,300 US dollars. And she got a 6 months, I think it was 6 months or a year of a suspended sentence. And, you know, that just doesn't feel right. You know, you have pedophiles running around with sentences that are lower than that. There's something wrong in this whole situation. And the judge also said the judgment is harsh because we to do the same thing. So we're actually setting an example by giving this by imposing this sentence. The other judge, who also fined another breaker of the quarantine order, he was actually more critical. He said he needs to impose this sentence. On the other hand, he is very unhappy with the snitching that's going on. He doesn't feel comfortable, and we need to stop the snitching. Of course, it's not going to stop. We all know that, I mean, Austrians and Germans love to snitch on other people. It is terrible. It makes me sick to my stomach. It is definitely not a good trait of Austrians and Germans.
So what we're seeing is, in the US, we've had the snitching thing, which I don't know if you knew this, but when de Blasio first initiated his hotline or text or whatever, people flooded it with pornography, and it was a great response, I thought. Just, you know, we're not doing this. We will not comply. LA, the same thing, although we know that people are taking it seriously. But when we hear about these things happening, we see it just as this is happening in the US, but we're following models that are not only happening in Austria now, but obviously have roots in German and Austrian politics and civic control. We throw around the word, this is just like the Stasi. And in fact, I bought the domain name StasiLA.com. This exact reason to
Good
me.
one.
I don't know what to do with it yet, but there will be something, because once you start enlisting regular people to snitch, it gets very scary. And if it results in fines and arrests, but when you talk about breaking quarantine, this is another weird thing. We are all under quarantine, right? This is ahistorical that people who are healthy are quarantined. So at least they were quarantined for testing positive. But one of the things we've also learned is these tests mean nothing. And if they're going to treat you as a criminal for getting a test, people wonder why we're not all rushing off to get tested. Well, here's a reason. As soon as you're in the system, you are going to be tracked. So is there the same anxiety in Austria about being tracked? I would imagine.
Nope.
No?
Nope. Nope, not at all. I mean, people are not as excited as the government would want people to be about the corona tracing app.
Right.
I will do no such thing and download a corona tracing app simply because I refuse to be traced. I mean, I don't know, these people, these totalitarian thoughts, it's like they never left. It's like, did we ever recover as a people from the Nazi era? Or did we just have a sort of an interlude, a peaceful interlude? It just seems like it's in the DNA of Austrians and Germans to be extremely totalitarian. And it makes me really scared. That's what actually scares me, honestly. When you have to listen to an Austrian Minister of Interior wagging his finger at press conferences, plural, calling people who do not comply with the corona laws life endangerers. Why doesn't he just call us murderers, potential murderers? How dare a government official call me a potential murderer? I mean, how low have we sunk? Where is the respect of a human being? I don't go around calling people potential murderers. I'm not a life endangerer. I just want to go out and go about my business.
Are there voices speaking up against that, as we have here? We don't maybe have enough, but we certainly do have a lot of voices speaking out against the same.
That's interesting. In Austria, I can count them on two hands. A few of them are doctors. Some of them are actually about to lose their medical licenses because of that. I know,
by the way,
of another woman who protested because she wasn't allowed to sing during a mass in St. Stephen's Cathedral, which is Austria's largest cathedral in the center of Vienna. And she was dragged out of the cathedral by police and then taken to a mental hospital. This is actually, I know the person, I mean, I know of the person. I can, this is not hearsay. I actually have an email from her where she recounts what's happened to her. There's another woman currently in a mental hospital because of protests. She has not been released yet.
Wow. That's
so
about.
You have doctors losing licenses, just saying. I mean, this is what's happening in the US, where doctors want to prescribe what's best for their patients, i.e. chloroquine, and they're not allowed to.
Right. And who knows how many have died because of the resistance there. And I want to get back to that too. But Dr. Simone Gold, who we know in Beverly Hills, who was one of the ones on the steps of the Supreme Court, lost her license, as did, I don't remember her name, Isabel, I think, and others, not even for misprescribing, but for speaking out about treatments that all of a sudden now the government knows best, or Facebook knows best, Google knows best. Whoever is making these decisions for us is pretty horrifying. But we've been placing our blame on Fauci, but you predate Fauci, right? We're a few weeks behind you in all of this, and Fauci wasn't dictating to you all. So it seems like there's this pervasive leftist narrative about it's so funny what you said. Don't wear masks. Why did they say it in the beginning? Because there was a shortage of masks, right? It was not for any scientific reason. Now wear one because it'll save lives, and now wear one because it's a reminder. We all need this reminder. So nothing is based on, real science. It's all agenda driven. So what we're seeing here and with you is the same thing. Where are the roots of this, do you think? Because we're blaming everything on, it's all about Trump. It's all about the election. It's all about undermining the economy. What is that counter narrative in Austria? It can still be Trump, and that he's a wrench in the globalist works. But are they going that far?
Well, I have come to the conclusion, and you know that I'm very diligent in my research as far as open sources, and you also know that I'm everything but a conspiracy theorist. I actually abhor conspiracy theories. But number one, let me remind you, Galileo was a walking conspiracy theory.
Right.
So maybe we shouldn't be so critical of conspiracy theories, because usually there's some truth to conspiracy theories. And without conspiracy theories, we probably wouldn't get to the truth, right? So maybe we should really stop thinking we're conspiracy theorists just because we want to get to the truth. The second thing is, like I said, I've been doing a lot of research, and open source research. I don't have any secrets or secret sources, but what I do believe is Trump is one reason, though worldwide not the reason. It's probably a helpful reason for people who hate Trump, and we all know that there's a big number of people who dislike Trump. I really do believe by looking at the website of the World Economic Forum and listening to the UN Secretary General, who is very open about what is actually both the World Economic Forum and the Secretary General of the UN are both very open and vocal about the world needing a great new reset.
Right.
So if you go to the website of the World Economic Forum of Davos, Switzerland, it's planned for the next World Economic Forum. I think it's always in February. The big discussion about we need a global reset. Now, I don't think there's anything democratic about this global reset. And I don't think it's anything like you and I imagine the reset. I know that there needs to be a reset, absolutely, because we all know that the economy worldwide is tanking. We all know that there's no real money left. All the paper money that's in our hands, and I'm no economist, please, I'm a political scientist, no economist, but I know that the money, the euro, the dollar, both are worth absolutely nothing. Why is the price of gold rising dramatically? Why is the price of silver rising dramatically? Why is what I've been saying for many years all of a sudden coming true, that gold and silver are rising? And I don't think that that's a conspiracy theory. I know that Gates is in there. I know that. I mean, all you have to do is pull the red thread and you'll always find Gates. You'll find the World Health Organization that is legitimized by absolutely no one but Gates. And kudos to Trump for pulling out of the World Health Organization. And then, of course, you have the connection Fauci, Birx, and the World Health Organization and Gates. And then you draw the line, and then all of a sudden you look at, Gates What's his main idea of what the world is supposed to look like? What he wants is to reduce world population. He's on the record for that. This is not a conspiracy theory. I mean, this is very easy. He's on the record. There's YouTube videos of him actually saying that many, many years ago. This is nothing new. What we're experiencing now has been going on behind the scenes for many, many years. We just weren't listening. We were too busy with other crises or perceived crises. Heck, I was busy with discussing Islam.
Right.
I mean, we've been doing this show for an hour, this interview for an hour now, and I've never once used the word Islam. You see? Isn't that interesting?
Right.
I no longer believe in coincidences. I think we were kept busy looking elsewhere, and now we're paying the price. We really need to wake up, seriously wake up. On the other hand, I'm not optimistic that we're going to be able to stop any of this. Never have been. I always knew that we wouldn't be able to stop Islam. We aren't, especially not in Austria. And I believe we have to ride the wave. We can't fight the wave. We're now in the midst of a big, big wave. We have to ride it. We're not going to be able to stop it. When the wave crashes, it's not going to be pretty. But what we need to do is we need to be prepared to pick up the pieces once the wave crashes. We're not going to be able to stop it. And we should really, really stop thinking that we can and wasting our time in trying to stop it. What that means for the US is defend the Constitution. Go out there and protest as much as you can, because you can still protest. I know that life is not easy for you in America, but at least you can still go out and have those rallies like the one you told me about that in Beverly Hills.
Right.
My God, if I were an American, if I were living in America, I would be at every single protest out there every single day. I would have my daughter in hand and I would protest and protest and protest. But knowing what I do about Europe and our lack of freedom, look at what happened in Berlin. You wanted to talk about what happened. There are no protests in Austria. The only protests that are allowed in Austria and Germany are Black Lives Matter protests.
So tell us, right, which is unbelievable. Tell us about Berlin, because this really was an astounding thing for us. Yes, we do have a ton of protests. We have tons of rallies every weekend. There are lots and lots of opportunities to rally on our side without vandalism, without theft, without arson, without blinding police officers with lasers. We're out there with flags, and I was at the Beverly Hills one, but they're happening all the time. We still don't get the numbers that they got in Berlin. So how did that come about? Who organized it? What have the repercussions been?
Well, the organizers of the rally it seems to be an obscure group. But as far as I read a few eyewitness accounts of the rally. And as far as I was able to glean, it was an obscure group, but apparently it didn't stop people from congregating in Berlin. Now, the people who participated in this rally, again, according to eyewitnesses and from what I've read from eyewitnesses and the video I saw, were people from all walks of life. Not as many from Berlin, but actually tons of people who were bused to Berlin, even as far south as Munich, which is pretty far away from Berlin. And the police said that there were 17,000 protesters. Untrue. It seems to me, from what I've read, between 500,000 and 1 million protesters. It's very clear that if you're protesting the government and its stupid COVID rules with distancing and masks, you're not going to wear masks, right? I mean, if you protest the masks, you don't wear masks. Right. So that was pretty clear. It was also pretty clear from what I've read and watched on videos, there was no violence whatsoever. The only violence was, as usual, perpetrated by the Antifas and other leftist groups who were protesting I mean, they protest everything, right? Everything but Black Lives Matter. Antifa comes out and protests. There was, like I said, no violence whatsoever. It was peaceful. The problem with this protest was government lost its credibility. The government says, oh, it's wonderful for Black Lives Matter to protest, and all of a sudden you have between 500,000 1 million protesters rallying against these draconian laws. There's something wrong. There's a lack of credibility. The problem is also the government, the media make the danger of COVID dependent on political conviction. So again, you have the left versus right, similar to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a Black Lives Matter protester, you're good. If you're critical of the COVID measures, of course, right away you're not good, and you actually deserve to be hung from the next street lamp. Also, remember that the loss of credibility of the government and the media began with the masks. As long as they were unavailable, they were useless. Let's go back to East Germany, the GDR. The government in East Germany said, oh, bananas aren't all that healthy anyway. So who needs bananas, right? So very similar. We have to really look at the past in order to understand the present. Another thing I found very interesting, the police told us that there were around 17,000 protesters. The government in East Germany said, well, it's just a mob. They said that back in 1989. It's just a mob protesting in the streets. Just
when the wall was coming down.
Before that, yeah. The protests leading up to the wall coming down. One more thing, the rallies, those rallies prior to the wall coming down, the political leaders in East Germany said demonstrators are instruments of the CIA. Today, the warning is watch out who you demonstrate with, because they're all Nazis. You don't want to be associated with Nazis, right? And back in East Germany, it was, oh, you don't want to be associated with the CIA, right? So very interesting how this is framed. Back when the Nazis were in power, it was all clan liability. You were accused of being part of a clan. Today, it's collective liability. Okay? You associate with these people, okay, you're automatically a Nazi, even though you have nothing to do with National Socialism. That's a problem. That's the problem. The framing, and then you have politicians in Germany actually tweeting and denouncing those demonstrators, those people who went out to protest. I mean, this is their constitutional right. Mm-hmm. This is their right according to the European Constitution, and their right according to the human rights framework in the European Union. And they are being called on Twitter by a very well-known German politician. These demonstrators, these protesters are COVIDiots. I mean, how low can you go? How can you, I mean, this is a right. You don't have to agree with someone who exercises the right to demonstrate. Did our side call the Black Lives Matter protesters idiots? I mean, we might have our ideas about that.
We called them vandals, but we didn't, because they were vandals. But now all of a sudden,
that's a difference,
right?
That's a difference,
right. We didn't call them.
BLM have the people protesting for Black Lives Matter have the right to protest. There's no doubt about that. It's constitutional. What is unconstitutional is violence. I think we can all agree on that. And anyone who protests is an idiot, in my opinion. Protests and does violence, I'm sorry. Protests coupled with violence, those people are complete idiots. They're not helping anyone or anything.
How are you seeing it? Back to Berlin. What's been the aftermath? There weren't arrests, but they are being...
Yes, there was. I'm sorry. Yes, there was. The organizer was briefly arrested and then let go. I assume, I don't know for a fact, but I assume that was just to scare him off.
Right.
And scare everybody
who
else.
Was it? Who was at the core of organizing that? Because we try really hard to get those numbers. I have, number envy. That was huge, and it was beautifully done. Does one know who was at the?
I don't. The group is so obscure. I've never heard of the group before, and I wouldn't even be able to tell you. They're so not important. From what I read, it wasn't even the speeches, even those weren't really important. What people cared about is the getting together, the coming together, the congregating, and showing that what's happening is not right.
Mm-hmm.
What Germany is doing is not right. The organizers are totally in the background. It's very interesting how...
That is really interesting.
I haven't even read any comment, any interview by the organizers.
Because that's not how it's normally done, or how it normally succeeds. Do you think it's the beginning of something, or was it was just a thing, and now we've all sort of gone back into the woodwork?
Yes, because it really wasn't. It was abnormal. It wasn't normal at all. Those protests, both in Germany and in Austria, are not what's normal. I did see reports that there were follow-up protests in Dortmund with about 1,500 people. There are rallies here and there, but nothing on a scale of what happened in Berlin.
Astounding.
What I did read is the August 1st rally can be compared to the rallies prior to the fall of the wall. So people do know that this was a very significant rally.
What did Merkel say in response?
Nothing, actually. She had other government ministers respond. Like I said, calling the protesters idiots, life in dangers. Right. And you know what's strange? The number of cases never rose after those rallies.
Weird, right?
Isn't it, huh? Perhaps there is something to it, that maybe this virus isn't as dangerous as we think it is. Especially when I think that today in Paris, almost everywhere in public, people are now forced to wear a mask. Something that I personally can't understand, because I don't see any virus floating around the air, or So what's going on again? I think we're being prepared for another lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
What's very interesting is also some schools in Germany have restarted with a very strict mask mandate for students in class, which I think is torture. And I mean the literal sense of torture. I think children are being tortured, not only interacting amongst each other, students, but also I always believed that those children who had with their moms in full burqa or full hijab, that can't be healthy for a child. Also, if you can't read a person's expression, it's horrid. I don't think we can even imagine what children, how they are mentally suffering, and to force them. Remember also that there's no air conditioning in most of our buildings in
Right.
Austria and in Germany and in France. It's now the hottest time of the year. We have temperatures above, I would say, 85 or 90 with very high humidity. How are they torturing the children?
Right. Do you think it's also that it's the children that rips me apart too? Do you think a lot of this further clampdown, you say preparing us for another lockdown, it seems to me too, it's getting us ready for, won't you be glad when you have when we have a vaccine?
Yes.
Going to, right? People will be just climbing all over each other to get that thing that will set us free. Is that the same?
Yes, yes. I think this is the preparation. They're also preparing us for the mandatory vaccinations by providing flu shots free of charge for the first time. We all know that flu shots don't really work. I remember my daughter getting hers in early February this year. She was quite late. She got her shot, and 4 days later, she had the flu. So it didn't really work, and she really did have the real flu. This was not just a cold. I mean, she had classic flu. We all know that it doesn't really work. It might work in some people. We all know that there's always a chance that, you know, the companies, the pharmaceutical companies, don't catch the right strain.
Right, with the flu, it's hit or miss every year. It's a different strain.
You know, that's just the way it is. As a political scientist, my worry is, will I get vaccinated? No. My worry is, how will I be locked out of society by not complying? My fear is, the way I see it right now with airlines in the US not permitting any sort of medical excuse for flying, for not wearing a mask on board.
Right.
Well, that already excludes me, because I actually have a medical excuse. I have a piece of paper saying that I cannot wear a mask. So I cannot fly, what is it, on Alaskan. I can't fly on Southwest, which happens to be my favorite airline. I can't fly. I mean, there's a whole list. They're excluding me because I have a medical condition. How many others are excluded? Right. What are you going to do with those people who do suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder? What you had, the gentleman who on Facebook who wrote, if you look at those people not wearing a mask, how do you know that this person wasn't raped? Right. With the hand on the mouth, and the person just, the lady just can't wear a mask because she'll suffer. She'll just, you know, she will relive her own rape. How do you know that? How can you exclude these people from flying? So my concern is, how is that going to work? What about forced testing? This is going to happen in Germany now. They're starting to force test people.
Is that right? They are? It's mandatory?
At the airports in Frankfurt and Munich. If you arrive from a country, a high-risk country, at the airport, and now train stations too, in Frankfurt and Munich, you are now force tested. Now, how are we supposed to understand what is force testing? People are going to actually hold open your mouth for you to be swabbed down your throat. Is that what we're going to have? Are we going to have police officers holding us, restraining us? Forced testing will lead to forced vaccinations. What about my body, my choice? What about the right to my physical integrity? I do have a right to my physical integrity, right? No,
because you want other people to die. We know this, right? It's the same.
But this is something we need to discuss. I think we really need to discuss this more often, in more detail. I think we need more constitutional scholars discussing this. Is it really constitutional to exclude people from flying? Whereas on the other hand, yes, these are private companies. Of course, they can exclude people. But how are we going to reconcile that? People are not allowed to fly anymore. This means they're not allowed to travel anymore.
Right. So
Again,
how
are we going to reconcile it? I don't have a solution. I don't. I really don't. I'm just.
I think it will be the private companies who take the lead in mandatory vaccinations, just as you have to take your shoes off or whatever. You have to be on a fly list. You can be you're put now on a no-fly list.
Yeah.
You refuse to wear a mask.
Yeah.
It's absolutely astounding. So the next thing will be requiring proof of vaccinations. And I think
we need to, my appeal is, we need to discuss this.
Yeah.
We need the best of the best in scholars to find a way to figure this out. How I understand private companies, but again, why am I not allowed to fly anymore? I understand that.
So
But
what do you see
how
are
do we
the
reconcile it?
differences between Austria/Germany and the United States? We've talked about this a lot. What do you, in thinking about it, what do you think are the biggest differences? Where are we? What advantages do we have? What advantages do you have?
Oh, well, I don't think we have any advantages. You know me, the biggest advantage is still your constitution. There's just no way around it. This is the bulwark of freedom. The US Constitution is the bulwark, and you need to defend it, you need to cite it, you need to know it. I mean, that's the first thing. You need to know the Constitution. It's ridiculous that you have to have an Austrian citizen telling you you need to know the Constitution. I know it. I studied it. I know the US Constitution very well. You know how much I admire it. I gush about it all the time. I wish we had a constitution, because then I would be able to fight for something. I, in Austria, what can I fight for? I don't have any freedoms anymore. You know what happened to me in court.
Right.
How am I going to fight for something knowing that I could be dragged to court again? I'm not interested in being dragged to court again. I've been there, I've done that. I think I've presented my credentials. My goal is to tell you, Americans, you have the Constitution. Yes, the situation is very dire in the United States. But look at you, Karen. You tell me, I go to this rally, I go to that rally. There's so many people here, there's so many people there. But what I don't hear from you is, oh, there were so many arrests here. The police were present, that people were hauled off, they were dragged off. And all, we're talking about peaceful protests here. We're not talking about Portland. We're not talking about Seattle. We're not talking about Chicago. My beloved Chicago, Magnificent Mile. What just happened in Chicago? I can't believe it. This is not protected by the Constitution. Peaceful protests are protected by the US Constitution. You are still allowed to do that.
Yeah.
You can still go out. And you know what? There is no excuse. Now that people are out of work, now people are furloughed, there's all the more reason to go out and do something about it. All the more reason. It would be helpful to vote according to freedom on November 3rd.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, look, I should be nonpartisan, but of course there's only one person to vote for, in my opinion. I think there's a choice between, we discussed this before we went live, there's a choice between socialism and capitalism. There's a choice between anarchy and the rule of law. There's a choice between better safe than sorry. Do we want to live better safe than sorry, or do we want to live free or die? I know where I stand.
Right.
It's very clear where I stand. The choice is yours, America, but just remember also, whatever choice you make also affects me and affects all the people, all Europeans. So you better choose wisely.
We will. We're trying. But you're right. It's really not just about us. Whatever, we are the beacon. And what we seem to have lost in recent in these few short months, I don't know, lost, but it's certainly suppressed, is who America is. We were founded by people with courage and who were looking for freedom. We were founded on free markets. We were founded on freedom of religion. We were founded on risk taking in literally some of the most astounding, Columbus wasn't the founding, but certainly beginnings. Those families who got on the Mayflower, most didn't make it. Most didn't make it through the winter. This is who.
And they knew that.
And they knew it was live free or die. California has barely been a state, in the scheme of world history. We were founded on risk taking, and now, and you weren't, right? Austria has a different inheritance, but we were, and for us to be, if it saves one life and we have to put bubble wrap around our children, it's an astounding thing. And for us, it's a sea change in our view of ourselves. And you talk about riding the wave. There are some elements that we need to fight back on, which is people die, and up until last November, there were N ways for people to die, where N was a gigantic, infinitely huge number. Now there's N+1.
Karen, every year, I happen to have some numbers here. Every year, 30 to 40,000 Americans die in automobile accidents.
Right? And we drive anyway.
Heart disease kills more than 600,000 Americans.
Right.
And still people continue to eat fast food, right?
Right.
Diabetes puts more than 80,000 Americans into their graves each year. Do we stop eating sugar?
Right.
No. So, that's what I mean by better safe than sorry.
Right.
No. And our greatest fear is we're being criticized.
Right.
That's what life is all about. We need to be able to criticize each other, right? We need to be able to discuss an argument, the pros and cons of an argument. And that's exactly what I'm missing in this whole COVID-19 scare. There are no pros and cons. It's basically the dictatorship from above.
Right. It absolutely is. I think we've covered lots. Are there questions anybody wants to ask? You can put them in the chat. If you do jump in and mute yourself, know that you will be on the recording, but that's up to, or you can turn your camera off. But Elisabeth, before we jump to anybody, do you have anything else you want to wrap up with? And let me say again, huge thank you. And
very, very welcome. It's always great to be with you. Although I do hope that next time we'll see each other in person. And not on these stupid Zoom conferences, because I do really want to look people in the eye and not just on a screen. Yes, exactly. I want to clink glasses with you, and with you plural, and I want to be able to hug everybody. I'm already telling you, if we see each other, there's no social distancing for me, because I'm not afraid, and I know that if you believe in freedom, you shouldn't be afraid either. So no, I have nothing else to add. I think I said everything. And I'm looking forward to questions, and thank you again for having me.
Thank you, and I do
tonight,
hope
my
to
time.
see you again. I'm grateful to Zoom that we can do this. Really,
Yes.
I can't imagine life without it. But as you know, I can't go to Austria.
It's only second best.
It's second best. I can't go to Austria because travel is restricted to there from the United States. You can't come here because of the mask thing. It's a bizarre state of affairs to not be able to. It's a horrible state of affairs.
Yes, it is.
Yes. Are there? But I do look forward to seeing you again. Are there questions Somebody had asked about Sweden. Is there talk about what's going on in Sweden?
Very little talk in public, although I did read something from the top medical doctor, if I remember correctly, who once again reiterated that Sweden made the right decision in not mandating a complete lockdown, and also that they were right in not mandating masks. So it seems that that Sweden has been vindicated, although of course the media and our politicians would never admit anything like that.
Right, we're reading about it too. Obviously, there was a great Newsweek article that said, Sweden not having the second wave like everybody is appears to be, their way was successful, and you get into the body of the text and it's all glowing. But inside is that little segment that says, also read this about Sweden, and it's one warning after another. Sweden, makes wrong decisions. Sweden, people are about to die. Sweden, and they just don't even, they're so unself-aware. It's just a shocking thing. But in Austria, people are aware of it, but the politicians, how can you admit you made a mistake if you're a politician?
Well, it's interesting that the Minister of Health did admit he made a mistake or his legal advisors made mistakes in how they drafted the law. But of course, it makes no difference. There's no excuse for drafting laws that aren't constitutional. That's why you have a whole host of legal minds and legal experts in your cabinets.
Right.
So, it's all, thank you for admitting that you're a dope, or your cabinet is a dope. The people in your cabinet are idiots, but that doesn't make it any better. And laws that are drafted, even under stress and under time pressure, need to be constitutional. Right. So no excuse for that.
Insofar as your Constitution protects, which it doesn't as much. Betsy, you have a question. Betsy Spiker, so great to see you. Are you there?
She seems to have stepped away.
She does. Let me grab Corey. In Germany, the COVID-related death rate is far lower than other leading westernized countries in Europe and North America. In your estimation, why has Germany been more, quote, successful in limiting their death rate?
I'm not even going to get into any death rates and numbers, because I believe all the numbers are rigged anyway. I don't look at the numbers too much, to be honest, and just because they seem to be lower than in other places doesn't actually mean that they're lower. And I still believe, dying of COVID doesn't mean that there were any underlying comorbidities. So I would rather stay away from any numbers. If you want the numbers, number crunching, Alex Berenson does a wonderful job on all those numbers. As Karen knows, numbers and I are not the best of friends.
But I would also say, though, the death rate is the number of deaths attributed to it, and those are uncertain. And the denominator is the number of positive tests, right? So the more I think Germany has done far more testing. So their denominator will be far bigger, so that that quotient will be.
So actually, the death, even looking at the death rate per capita, Germany is far, far lower, like some tiny proportion of the other countries. It's startling. It's like 1/5 of the UK or something like that per capita.
But I still, if I may add, what we need to look at is the excess death rate. And that's just as low in Austria. But again, Alex Berenson does this best. He's published his second little booklet on Amazon where he does all the numbers. I'm very I try to stay away from all these numbers because, you know, you say one number, the next person says another number. Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, the number of deaths is low, but so is the number
It's
in
just
Austria.
it's way lower than the other countries. It's
Yeah,
just
I mean,
odd.
we have Austria as of today, I think, has 719 deaths out of a population of 8.5 million. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That number is absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
So
Ridiculously
but,
low. Ridiculously low is what you're saying.
ridiculously low, yes, absolutely. But ridiculous also in the sense, if we look at, you know, 30 to 40,000 die in automobile accidents in the US every year. I mean, if we say every life counts, don't the 30 to 40,000 lives count too?
And those 30 to 40,000 lives, their average age is, you know, 35 or 40 years old,
Exactly, not 90 plus.
Right.
So
Yeah, the Germany, looking at the deaths per million, which is better than, you know,
yeah,
deaths per positive, is really interesting. And when you do America, if you do America without New York and America with New York, we're way at the bottom. New York, if treated as if it were like a country, is through the roof. We're at the top. Sweden is towards the bottom. But yeah, Germany is anomalous in that way. Yeah, who knows? It must be their diet.
Bier und Schweinshaxe.
Genau, ne? Betsy, Betsy, go ahead. Unmute. You need to unmute.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
What about the use of hydroxychloroquine in Europe?
I don't hear a lot of it. If I weren't reading US news reports, I wouldn't know anything about hydroxychloroquine at all.
That's really interesting.
I don't think it's the protocol here. I would actually have to ask my husband, but I don't know that he's actually using it. He has treated a number of COVID-19 of patients suffering from this illness, but hydroxychloroquine is not really. I don't think it's being used here in Austria. Not really mentioned at all.
Treatment. What is the go-to?
Let me think what he's told me. I think there's a lot of antibiotics. Maybe the acitrom, what is it? Acitro. Yeah. But I'm not really aware of what the standard protocol right now is, but it's definitely not hydroxychloroquine. But I could ask, because I know he's around. If you're interested, I could quickly ask. So if you want me to do that, that would be a second.
That really is. That is really interesting because it's such
do you people want me to quickly ask my husband what the standard protocol is?
Yes.
Okay, give me a second.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question, Betsy, because here we all know that we can turn to that, right? And remdesivir or whatever it is, I never know how to say it. And there's the steroids, and feels like we have a whole lot of things that can be used. And I wonder if they are using that in Germany, Corey, as part of their. I know that I first heard of it as being absolutely the go-to in France in the very earliest of days.
Right.
France and Muncie, New York.
That's because SARS-CoV, the original SARS-CoV, it was effective.
Yeah.
So that's why they went to it, and it also had logical reasons why it was effective. Like, it wasn't just a guess, like, let's just try this. And
right. No, and it was the French Dr. Raoul
Didier
Yeah,
Roald, yes.
Karen, it's called azithromycin.
azithromycin
Azithromycin, yep.
And Dr. Zelenko's protocol in New York,
also.
yes.
Okay, I have live information from my husband who's right above me. And he told me there's no standard protocol for treating COVID-19 here in Austria. COVID-19 is usually treated with lots of fluid and cortisone. So that's very interesting. So that's the standard treatment, although there's no protocol like in the US.
Well,
But I think that's interesting. I didn't know that.
That is
And I specifically asked him about the hydroxychloroquine. No, it's not used.
wow.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Betsy, great question.
Yep. Very important question.
And it is, yeah, from my understanding, the hydroxychloroquine is what allows the azithromycin to get to where it
The
has to.
zinc.
And the zinc.
And
the
the zinc,
zinc.
yes.
So those two lines, which is when they had those two bogus tests, they only gave the HCQ, which we all know on its own doesn't do what it's supposed to, and they withheld the azithromycin. Right? Did I say it right this time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The CPAC and the zinc. Right. So we're told sort of prophylactically, to take D and zinc, and C is never a bad thing. D3, I guess. And I've heard a handful of other things, but I know tons of people who have the HCQ zinc Z-Pack cocktail waiting, in case they need it. They've gotten prescriptions. It's hard to get a prescription from a doctor, and then it's hard to get it filled because it's become political, but you don't have the same politicization of it. Right, and it needs to be given really early on, the HCQ. So it feels like they're treating us like, A, they don't want anything to work, and B, they're treating us like idiots.
Yep.
And it's,
That's how they want us to be. They want us to be the sheep.
We know best, they know best, and we're supposed to capitulate. But as long
And HCQ is cheap.
It's cheap, right? And they want to set us up for vaccines and control. So anything that might be rumored to work, they don't want anything to do with.
Of course. But apparently, what I just told you with lots of fluid and cortisone seems to work as well.
Yeah, I'd heard steroids have been also a good treatment.
Yeah. But my husband said the steroids only if there is lung damage. Other than that, it's just the fluids.
Yeah. Unbelievable. So do you know anybody in Austria who has had it?
Yep. Yes, a friend of mine, a friend of my husband's actually also in the army, a high-ranked officer in the Austrian army. He's about, I would say, 5 years, he's in his early 50s, and he contracted he was really in a bad state. He was in ICU for a while, I think more than a week, and he's recovered since, but that's it, no one else.
Yeah, wow.
And that's the weird thing, if you think about it, if it's so prevalent, and if we have to be so afraid, how many of us actually know someone who's had it or who thinks he's had it? And, every time you get a little, your throat scratches a little bit, you're like, oh, did I just, and you know what, honestly, I remember early on in the crisis, a friend of mine called me and she said, oh, I just returned from a ball night. They were out partying at a big ball, lots of people. That was a week before the shutdown, and she really had a bad case of the flu. And she said, well, she asked me, should I get tested or? And I said to her, you know what difference does it make? if you know, in this, I don't like the words because they sound so Hillary-like, right?
Yeah.
But in a sense, I said to her, you know, you really want to go through the whole shebang with you know, getting tested, and then maybe you had it, and if you had it, you have to go into quarantine, and then you have, you know, all the hassle associated with it. And she said, you know what, you're right.
Yeah.
Why bother? And I thought to myself, look, I just returned from CPAC. Lots of people, tons of people. I mean, really, like, people, you know what CPAC is like. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
And then, you know, all Matt Schlapp sent out the emails. Well, this person tested positive, and here a case, and there a case. And I was like, well, you know, maybe I had it, maybe I didn't have it. I did feel you know, when I returned to Austria, I was queasy for a while. My stomach was a little upset for a while. Well, you know, who knows? Maybe that was COVID. And on the other hand, I'm like, I really don't care.
Right.
It makes absolutely no difference whether or not I've had it.
But you're right. I had forgotten that. I mean, you mentioned it earlier. You were out here for CPAC, and then I got the email too, even though I hadn't been, or I heard somewhere, somebody from CPAC had it, and this was within a couple days.
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking, I'm sure everyone associated with it, this will be, you know, aside from if it goes awry, that it will be horrible, but this is a great little lens into how virulent is this thing really, because you are packed in with people constantly. It's indoors. It's like it's outdoors, but it's indoors. The circulation is not that great. Perfect little petri dish for this.
And there was nothing.
There was
you know, how many thousands of people were there? How many thousands? Seriously.
Thousands and thousands.
Thousands and thousands of people. And I remember, you know, when President Trump spoke, or when the vice president spoke, I mean, the place was packed. Solid. And then, you know, people actually left the hall and they squeezed into those hallways, and it was packed.
Right, packed.
There was nothing. You know, if you had I think it was 2 cases or 3 cases that Matt Schlapp sent out information on, out of how many thousands, maybe 20,000 in those 3 days. Come on, give me a break.
And this was at the same time that they were saying never since the Spanish flu, and
Yeah.
and you have your Sebastian Kurz saying we will all know someone who died. In the beginning, it sounded even worse than that it was going to be of every 3 people you know, at least 1 will die, possibly, right? In the beginning, that's really what it was, a third of us. It'll just, we're all going to be awash in deaths. They had set aside park area and parks in New York City in preparation. You were talking about setting aside those hospitals too. We had 2 boats, one here in LA.
Yeah, the Mercy, USS Mercy or something, right?
Exactly. That was going to take the overflow. It was going to be hell. They set up. This was that kind of fear that it's hard to
and it just never happened.
Here. Nothing ever happened. Kate just put in, she knows of no one who had it. I probably know 20 people who have had it. I don't know anybody who died. I know people who know people who died. But I probably know at least 20 people who have had it, which means probably 40 who had it, you know, and half of whom don't even know. And they were saying you could be asymptomatic and still be a super spreader, which turns out if you're asymptomatic, you're not even spreading it. So stop all of this. Any other questions from the, I think the lens into this, how there's so many similarities. We tend to see all of this as purely political I don't know, however we see it, just seeing it in a bigger context of it's not that different, but we do have the Constitution. We do have better alternative media, for which I'm very grateful. We have doctors speaking out, and by the way, I was corrected. Simone Gold did not lose her license. She was fired from her position at the hospital. She did not lose her license. I do think the other doctor lost her license. But, so we do have a lot of people speaking up, speaking out, a lot. We do have constant rallies. If you look at the pictures of the Beverly Hills rally, it's all American flags. It's joyous, it's fun, it's laughing. We need to do a lot more of that. And is there anything we can do to help you? In Austria, can we, you know, walk away from, can we send Brandon Strock over there to?
No, I appreciate you asking, but I don't think we can be helped really. You know, you're supporting me and those people behind me by letting me speak out, by allowing me to inform Americans about what's going on in Europe, because I think, like you said, you need to know what's going on outside of the US. You shouldn't focus, I mean, yes, the focus should be on the US, but you know, whatever's happening in Europe will eventually make its way across the pond, and it will come to the United States. I mean, you saw it, and you felt it when we spoke on the phone.
Yeah.
You knew what was going to happen because you and I were talking about it all the time. I still believe that the situation in the US is different from Europe. I'm not really sure if federalism is all that helpful in this situation. This is what you can see, that federalism wasn't helpful in Germany, because lots of laws, you have, you know, all those states with all those different laws, and people got very confused. I understand that federalism is very important. I know its advantages, but I believe in a situation like the one we're in right now, it's a disadvantage. On the other hand, do we want the entire United States to be modeled after New York? I don't think so.
Right.
I don't think we want that. I think there's other states like South Dakota we want to model the US.
Right.
I don't have the solution. All I can do is tell you what I see, what I think, what I feel. I don't think Austria or Germany or Europe, for that matter, can be helped. We have to ride the wave. We never got to talk about the European Union. Maybe we should keep that for, we should lead that for another time. But it's important that Americans know that there is Europe, that it's in a bad state, that you Americans have a responsibility to Europe. You've always been a friend of Europe, and you should know that there are still lots and lots of Europeans counting on you, and that not every European hates America, and not every European hates Trump. That's what you need to know. And I, in my little circle, am trying to do my best to explain that the America that is portrayed on the media, in the media, is not the America that I know, that I love and respect. That it's completely different, and it's always hard to explain that no, Mr. Trump certainly did not tell Americans to inject, what was it?
Oh my gosh.
Clorox. Remember Clorox?
And Clorox, right, Clorox, exactly.
Let me tell you,
right.
Everybody in the media in Europe thought or wanted to believe that he actually meant that. And I can tell you from my own experience that Europeans or European media don't understand his humor and how he makes fun, how he actually really makes fun of the media and everybody else. And of course, he never meant for people to inject Clorox. So, but that, you know, You know that, I know that. So, but anyway, I get America, I understand it, and I will do my part in continuing to explain America, the America that I know and love and respect here in Europe. And the only thing I can say is that hopefully one day I'll be able to return. I don't see it right now, and that's what depresses me most, that I won't be able to pack up my suitcase and head over to the States. That's my biggest challenge, that I can't do that.
It's very painful. It's
Yes,
very
it is.
painful. I neglected to mention when I introduced you that Elisabeth is our latest new fellow of the American Freedom Alliance, which is very exciting for us. And I should have, sorry to have left that out. It's so great.
Yay, thank you, Courtney.
For freedom, to support American freedom, which is global. It's global freedom. It really is.
Yes, it is. After America, there's no place to go.
We are the last best hope, and yeah, there will be no place to go. So we are doing our best here. We are watching keenly what's going on there. We are fighting here on a daily basis, however we can. So we're doing our best, Elisabeth.
I know you are, and I wish I could be with you.
Ditto.
I would love to be with you guys and stand with you. I had such hopes to be able to be with you guys, you know, to walk with you, and maybe even be in the States on election night, but it just doesn't look like it. I don't think the travel ban will be lifted anytime soon. So.
No, even if the ban is the mask thing, it's going to be the mask thing.
For me, it's going to be the mask thing. I think I would be able to find a way into the country if we had high enough people, maybe Louis Gohmert, maybe somebody else, you know, sort of giving me permission to enter the US. I mean, you can always find a reason to be able, you know, a need to be in the US.
Yeah.
But it's the mask thing that really is a problem for me. I admit it. It may not be a problem for everyone, but it is a huge problem for me. And I can't muzzle myself. It doesn't work that way, because you wouldn't take me seriously. If I all of a sudden wore a mask, I might as well wear a hijab or a burqa, and you would think, you know, what's wrong with her? You've
surrendered. You would have surrendered.
I will never surrender. If you read my book, by the way, people, whoever has not read it, you must read it. It's got a wonderful introduction written by Karen. I'm so honored that she did that for me. And if you get a chance, actually, there should be some copies in your garage, right?
There are. I do. So, I have copies.
If you want to purchase a copy, please get in touch with Karen. She has a box of books in her garage.
I do. Well, thank you so much, Elisabeth, for all you do. Thanks for taking time out. So great to see you.
Thank you.
We will have you on again, and we will talk about the EU.
Yes. Have me back on once I'm back in Vienna.
Okay.
And I have the lay of the land, and school has started, and then I'll be able to tell you more, because I'm returning to Vienna the first week of September. So
okay.
If we see each other sometime late September, I'll be able to tell you more about how it feels to be in a big city in Vienna. Right now, I'm stuck in the mountains, so I can't tell you much.
Not too bad place to be stuck.
Not too bad. That's true. And thank you, Kate, for your lovely words. And thank you, Diane. Thank you, Laura. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining me at this very strange hour for you. But the 9 hours difference, it just isn't possible for me to do it at any other time. Unless we do it, when it's midnight your time, because that's when we
talk. Yeah.
When Karen and I always talk. It's morning for me, and Karen, it's time for when it's your bedtime.
Right.
Thank you, Diane. Lovely. Thank you for being there. Also, Sheila and Corey and everybody else I can't see, and Christine, if you're still there, thank you also. I really appreciate you all. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules. And also, Karen, your work is so important. Please never give up. AFA needs you. America needs you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Elizabeth. Bye, everyone.
Everybody.
Bye.
See you soon, and God bless America.
Indeed.
Bye. Bye,
Bye.
guys. Bye, Christine. Thank you. Let's talk soon, Christine Brim. And I'm going to be out of here. I need a beer. Bye.
Go get your beer.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Talk to you soon, Karen. Bye.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.